Welcome to your class in Introduction to Western Herbalism and Herbalist Field Botany, Patterns in Form and Function. Before we get into this class, I would like to do some Zoom logistics. So at the moment, you should be able to see my screen of myself and the slides. If you need to fit the slides to your screen better, go to the top bar of your Zoom, go to View Options. You should have it at 100% Zoom ratio. Then you can use the hand icon to pull the slideshow up so that you see only the slides. I hope that helps. Okay, so my name is Holly Hawthorn, and I am a clinical herbalist located in Southern Oregon. What personally drew me to the practice and lifestyle of herbalism is the desire to support my community through a gentler way of living, supporting health and wellness. I've been an orthopedic massage therapist for over 13 years. Fairly early on in my career, I began to see patterns of clients reporting a variety of symptoms manifesting in their bodies as a result of a particular pharmaceutical drug they were prescribed, and therefore were beginning to take another drug to mitigate the symptoms of that drug. After seeing this scenario so frequently, I began to explore more gentle ways of supporting the body through both nutrition and herbs. My lifelong love of nature and big wild spaces drew me to learning about medicinal plants and that originated in the mountains that I now call home. In my private practice, I also saw many cases of what I like to refer to as dis-ease. I feel often rooted in the lack of connection people have with nature, the outside world, and rhythms of the seasons. Herbalism is a way to reconnect people with the land. After many years of rigorous study, I am happy to be able to now call myself a clinical herbalist, providing a safe container to support my community in their use of herbs as a means to support themselves and their loved ones. Through this class, I hope to provide a more comprehensive overview of what contemporary herbalism is and looks like. This class is intended to be a basic overview of herbal medicine. Therefore, rather than grasping onto the information provided in the examples, I hope that you can more understand the overarching concepts of herbalism. This class will also introduce some concepts of field botany. My purpose of including this information in this class is so that when you are out on a walk in the woods, you might be able to identify a few common plant groups based off of common flowers and leaf structures. When able to identify plant families, one can glean information about their plants, in particular profile of medicinal properties and its effects upon our physiology. However, this class is just a launching point into the world of herbalism. My aim with this class is to merely ignite curiosity and a desire to learn more. Basically, each of the slides in this presentation can be a class all unto itself. So with that said, welcome. I am pleased to walk this path with you, and I am excited as you deepen your journey with medicinal plants. The number of medicinal plants is difficult to determine, as it depends on how one defines medicinal plant. The earliest historical records of herbs are found from the Sumerian civilization, where hundreds of medicinal plants are listed on clay tablets. The Ebers Papyrus from ancient Egypt in 1550 BC describes 850 plant medicines. The Greek physician Dioscorides, who worked in the Roman army, documented over 1,000 formulas for medicines using over 600 medicinal plants in De Materia Medica in 660 AD. This formed the basis of pharmacopoeias for some 1,500 years. Medicinal plants are widely used as folk medicine in non-industrialized societies, mainly because they are readily available and cheaper than modern medicines. However, the usage of certain plants has been documented for thousands of years in well-established traditions, such as traditional Chinese medicine or in India's Ayurvedic medicinal heritage. Western herbalism is a practice that draws from herbalism traditions of Europe and Americas in the support of and prevention of particular conditions or a set of conditions. A clinical Western herbalist As a clinical Western herbalist, we are not treating or diagnosing. However, we aim to support health and wellness, particularly at the root of a systemic imbalance. Choices are made based off of a physician's diagnosis, the herbalist's and clinical experience, and traditional knowledge of medicinal plant remedies, preserved by oral tradition and in written records over 1,000 years. So, connection through phytochemistry. Secondary metabolites are organic compounds that are not directly involved in normal growth, development, or reproduction of the plant. Instead, that play a role in processes that increase a plant's survival and reproductive ability. They act as defense mechanisms against predators such as herbivores, other plants, fungus, or pathogens, protect against UV damage, and help to attract pollinators, sometimes in the form of pigments or smells. These compounds are the types of plant compounds that provide us with medicinal support. California poppy, for example, is known for its very specialized metabolites, especially the benzylisoquinoline alkaloids, BIAs. These metabolites are produced by a plant as a defense mechanism against herbivores, pathogens, and are involved in the plant, how the plant interacts with other organisms in the ecosystem. The isoquinoline alkaloids of California poppy have medicinal value to us. They have actions of being antispasmodic, antimicrobial, analgesic, and sedative. Another type of secondary metabolite that has been shown to attract pollinators are flavonoids. These are a class of phenolic compounds that are responsible for the color of flowers. Flavonoids have tremendous medicinal benefit to us as well, commonly understood to be antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, anti-allergenic, antispasmodic. An example of a flavonoid-rich plant can include artemisia or mugwort. There are 3 prominent flavonoids in mugwort: rutin, camphorol, and quercetin. These compounds are likely responsible for the anti-inflammatory, circulatory, and immune stimulation, antioxidant, antispasmodic, and mood-regulating activities of mugwort. Another type of secondary metabolite that is commonly found is a terpene compound. Agastache, or otherwise known as anise hyssop, has a high terpene content consisting of mono, di, tri, and sesquiterpenes, all determined by the size of the molecules. Monoterpenes, which are usually the scent molecules, are the smallest, for example. One terpene in particular is called limonene, and limonene often has a citrusy scent to it. In anise hyssop, it is the terpenes that are responsible for its herbal actions of elevating mood, relieving stress, providing relief for heartburn and gastric distress. So, finding functions and patterns in phytochemistry. Herbalism can feel very daunting for those just beginning on their path. There is so much information to take in and learn about plants and how they affect our bodies. When we study a medicinal herb, we explore the botanical identification, the habitat, the growing, harvesting, sustainability issues of the plant. We study the taste and the energetic profile, the physiological actions the plant has on our body, the indications of use of the plant, the therapeutic applications of that plant, the pharmacology, the mechanisms of action of that plant, meaning the chemistry and what it does to our bodies, and the various scientific studies of a plant use or of its phytochemical constituents, its preparation, dosage, and the other herbs we often use it with in formulation, and of course its safety considerations. So it's a lot of information. Where do you begin? So I suggest for people to find the patterns and information that they already can ascertain, such as, for example, flavors. And the main flavors we can think of are sweet, bitter, sour, salty, pungent. Okay, so here are some examples of what I mean. Bitter flavor is often coming from the constituent of alkaloids or terpenes, such as iridoids. Plant examples with a bitter flavor profile might include artichoke leaf, dandelion root, gentian root, angelica, mugwort, or yellow dock. Also, these bitter flavored herbs aid with digestion, especially by kickstarting the digestive process with digestive enzymes, reducing gastric motility time, allow time for more adequate digestion and absorption. They help with heartburn and reflux, indigestion, bloating, cramping, spasm, and constipation, and therefore relieves irregularity with bowel movements. These bitter constituents, they also improve liver function. They do this by balancing blood sugar through liver and pancreatic activity. They also help with detox, meaning less systemic inflammation, which leads to fewer allergies or asthma. Less systemic inflammation also leads to improvement in chronic diseases, such as skin disease and many others. The herbal actions of bitter herbs. So the actions are what the herbs are doing in our body, the action they have in our body. So these bitter herbs are digestive stimulant, blood sugar balancer, relaxing nervine, relaxing diaphoretic, that means they help you sweat, alternative lymphatic, they're moving the lymph, vermicide, laxative. So these are examples of actions of a bitter flavored herb. Now we can move to sweet flavors. Often these are from the constituent of polysaccharides. This is a phytochemical group that often has a sweeter flavor. An example would be a demulcent herb. Demulcent means it's soothing the mucous membranes. It's, for example, it creates a mucus type consistency and soothes the membranes, but it isn't creating more mucus. So an example would be of demulcent herbs such as marshmallow root, licorice, slippery elm. These herbs, again, help nourish and moisten the mucous membranes of the body. The sour flavor are often acidic or tannin-rich herbs. And antioxidant-rich herbs such as berries, hawthorns, or rose hips can be put into this category. Tannin-rich herbs such as the rose family, uva ursi, oak bart. So these all have sour flavor. Salty flavor. So when herbalists say salty, we often mean mineral-rich herbs. And these often strengthen the bones, the hair, the teeth. And examples can include nettle, horsetail, oat straw. Diuretic herbs are such as cleavers, chickweed. And remember, diuretic herbs, it's a tonic to the kidneys, but they help people increase urine production. And then there's these salty flavored herbs that support lymph flow. So the lymphatic system, such as violet or chickweed. And lastly, we have the pungent flavor. And we often put the herbs such as resins or essential oils into this category. There are so many examples. So some examples can include stimulating expectorant herbs such as ginger, garlic, horseradish, stimulating diuretic herbs such as juniper berry, stimulating diaphoretic herbs such as ginger, clove, cayenne, antimicrobial herbs, oregano, thyme, rosemary, carminative herbs, turmeric, cumin, fennel. And remember, that's also supporting the GI system and digestion. Antispasmodic herbs, so helping against muscle spasm, lobelia. Okay, so now we get to talk about herbal energetics. What do we mean? So when we speak of energetics, we are recognizing the constitution of a person or a plant. For example, if someone runs hot, sweats a lot, deals with anger issues, has a lot of inflammation in their body, This indicates heat. If someone has poor circulation, especially to the peripheries, sluggish digestion, fatigue, this can indicate coldness. If someone has a chronic dry skin, hair issue, dark yellow urine, is dehydrated, has hard pebbly stools, that could indicate dryness. If someone has high blood pressure, sluggish liver, slow metabolism, brain fog, water retention, that could be stagnation. So these are all examples of energetic profiles in a person. Plants also have unique energetic profiles determined by their specific constituents. Some plants are very warming and stimulating, whereas others are very cooling. Meaning if they're very warming and stimulating, they might be stimulating circulation, stimulating lymphatic flow, creating warmth in the body, whereas others are very cooling, and these are our anti-inflammatory herbs. They cool the actual temperature of the body. Some are very astringent and therefore drying, and others are very nutrient dense and moistening. Some of these ideas of herbal energetics are rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, as well as Ayurvedic medicine and other traditions. Therefore, as a Western contemporary herbalist, we are not only considering one's diagnosis, lab results, presentation of symptoms, but also their energetic profile. Herbalists are often able to match people to the right energetic profile of plants. For example, to support the individual that is presenting a lot of heat, we want to incorporate herbs that cool that heat or inflammation. So understanding medicinal plants through this lens can help to create a very individualized formula of herbs that are unique to that person at a particular moment in time. And so for me in my practice, I feel that this is part of the art involved in herbalism. Okay, herbalism, medicine for the people. The World Health Organization, WHO, estimates that 80% of the world's population uses herbal medicine for primary health care. Traditional medicine has been an integral resource for health for hundreds of years in communities all over the globe. And it is a mainstay for some inequalities in access to conventional medicine. Herbalism and traditional medicine ensure biodiversity, heritage, inclusion, and sustainable development. This is why I refer to herbalism as a lifestyle. Everyone, regardless of education or access needs, can somehow incorporate medicinal herbs into their daily practices and foods. Herbalism is also a vehicle for connection with the earth. So here is a point where I just get super amazed by herbal medicine. How incredible is it that we have evolved alongside these plants for thousands of years? Some of these plants, our bodies have developed specific receptors for that have intended effect on our physiology. So cool. I love the idea that these phytochemicals found in plants are in fact the way the plants interact with us and communicate. I know that can begin to sound wooey, but there is science. But think about it, plants have evolved to be specialized in their respective ecosystems, especially in the case of native medicinal plants. We are part of their ecosystem. If we can slow ourselves down and open our senses, we can interpret and, dare I say, learn from these plants what they have to offer us. I guarantee you will be amazed at what you learn. How do we put that into practice? Okay, this is just one example. Go to your local health food store, pick out a plant tincture that you have never met before and would like to learn more about. Before you even crack open a book or dive into research on the internet, find a quiet, peaceful spot to sit, preferably outside, and just take a couple drops of that tincture and sit in silence for 5 to 10 minutes. With a couple of drops, You won't have any pharmaceutical interactions. Make note of any bodily sensations you experience, any thoughts or emotions that pass through you, write them down. And then go research the plant. I think you'll find that your experiences are, interestingly enough, in alignment. Or on your next walk in nature, choose a plant or a tree and sit in silence with it. Be open to what you feel and experience. Getting reacquainted with the elements of nature in these simple ways opens our minds, our eyes, and our hearts to the natural world around us, reminding us that we are all part of the same web of life. So now we're going to move into botanical identification through the lens of an herbalist. So for myself, I've been an avid hiker in the mountains since the time of my teenage years, and I find peace in the solitude of nature, but I'm also curious about the critters, the trees, the geology, the plants of that location. So for much of my life, I've marveled at the beauty in nature. However, I didn't have the specific knowledge of botany. Walking into a dense forest appeared akin to a big green wall of foliage. I remember the first time I took a botany field studies class, I began to see beyond the wall of green and be able to differentiate the plants around me. It was liberating, but also intimidating. It was an entirely new language to learn. I remember receiving my Jepson manual, Vascular Plants of California, this ginormous textbook in the mail, and being met with a complete sense of dread and trepidation at its immense size and lack of photographs. But I began to enjoy the process of keying out plants and looking at the fine details of a plant, really getting to know the plant intimately. However, it was still so much information to hold and process, and I would feel a sense of overwhelm at how was I supposed to know the exact species in front of me. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Herbalists can more often than not substitute related species medicinally. So yes, there are some that are much more researched than others, and this isn't the case for all plants, but that does not mean that Balsam oryza deltoidea and Balsam oryza sagittata cannot be used interchangeably. They have the same herbal constituents. So in this class, I hope to focus more on the specific characteristics of plant families. Once you know a plant belongs to a certain plant family, you know that this particular plant family has its certain patterns in its form, then you can apply that knowledge of a pattern in its function due to the familiar tendency towards certain phytochemicals. So the purpose here in this class is not to get bogged down in the details and overwhelmed with vocabulary, but to have a basic understanding of flower and leaf structure so as to help designate plant family. This will help you to identify the specific species in your regional plant identification reference guide, and you will be able to infer what medicinal properties that particular plant might have. Okay, so I do have a quote here from Charles Darwin, but we're looking at a photo of Carl Linnaeus, who lived from 1707 to 1778. He founded the modern system of naming organizations called binomial nomenclature, based on the organism's morphology and commonalities, the features that organisms have in common, the closer their relationship is. And so for here, for example, on this slide of binomial nomenclature, so you'll have the name of the plant. It's always going to be written in italics. The first is the genus. The second is the species, under not capitalized. And sometimes you'll see an initial on the end. In this case is L. So this is a picture of yarrow, Achillea millefolium. And the author in this case was Linnaeus. So we can glean the description, some of the description of a plant from its actual Latin name, such as Echinacea purpurea. Purpurea means purple colored, or Equisetum arvense, which is horsetail, right? And equus means horse bristle, or arvense means growing in a field, or Acamum tenuiflorium, which is holy basil. Acamum means aromatic, and tenuiflorium means tender flower. Bear with me as I speak the Latin words. We all, we're all there. In regards to unknown species, the abbreviation of SP will follow the genus name, or SPP. And so these are unknown species. And so SPP meaning multiple unknown species. And then there are the names for the hybrids, varieties, and cultivars. These are often found in commerce. For example, you will have a genus name, and then the X denotes a hybrid between two species, and then the new name or the cultivar name follows that. So for example, here we have a different type of lavender, and we have a different type of echinacea. Levels of classification. So to review the levels of classification, the biggest to smallest is the domain, the kingdom, division, class, superorder, order, family to subfamily, tribe, genus, and species. As an herbalist, the classification levels most relevant to us are the order, the family, genus, and species. The family will give us an idea of the shared characteristics. The genus will give us a more specific constituent and medicinal profile, and the species will indicate the specific plant. Plants can be divided into two major categories known as vascular and non-vascular plants, according to the presence or absence of a vascular system. The vascular system of a plant contains the xylem and the phloem. The main difference between vascular and non-vascular plants is that vascular plants contain a specialized xylem and phloem tissues for the transportation of water and foods, while non-vascular plants do not contain specialized vascular tissues for transport. Vascular plants are known as higher plants, while non-vascular plants are known as lower plants. Vascular plants become tall due to the structural support gained from its lignified xylem, and non-vascular plants grow on the surface of the ground or on tree trunks. Vascular plants are well differentiated into roots, stems, and leaves. The dermal tissue system of these plants consists of cutin, which is a waxy substance forming the cuticle. The cuticle produces a protective covering throughout the plant body against desiccation of water. It also regulates gas exchange through the stromata, the pores within the cuticle. We will be focusing our attention in this class on vascular plants. Many flowers have both male and female parts. The male part, the stamen, consists of the anthers, which are the pollen-producing parts, and the filaments, which hold up the anthers. The female parts are made up of the pistil. The pistil is comprised of the stigma, the sticky surface of the pistil's top, where the pollen germinates. The style that holds up the stigma, the ovaries, which contain the ovules, and the ovules, which then become the seed after fertilization by the pollen. The other parts of the flower include the petals, usually bright to attract pollinators, the sepals that protect the flower bud when it's developing, and the receptacle, the portion of the stalk that the flower structure, and the peduncle, which is the flower stalk. Some plants will have a hypanthium. The hypanthium, the stamens are born on the hypanthium, and which are the pollen-producing reproductive organs of the flower. The hypanthium helps in many ways with the reproduction and cross-pollination pathways of most plants. In different plants, the number of petals, sepals, stamens, and pistils can vary. The presence of these parts differentiates the flower into complete or incomplete. Apart from these parts, a flower includes reproductive parts, the stamen and pistil. A flower may have only female parts or only male parts or both. So then we ask, why do flowers vary? Animal pollinators are credited for the vast smorgasbord of flower shapes, sizes observed in nature. Pollinators have the motive, which is energy and nutritional gain, and the means, which is via pollen transfer, a key step in plant sexual reproduction, to exert selection on the floral features of their host plants. However, it can be said that the ecology of the flower, the size and shape based on general premise, that the morphological features of an organism are subject to multiple and conflicting selection pressures. The functional ecology of flowers that bear an evolution of flower size and form are the interactions of plants with flower enemies and resources costs associated with floral display. So we're going to get into some of the inflorescent types. So the corum is a short and broad, and these are not exhaustive. This is not an exhaustive list. These are just some examples, and there are a lot more, but this is what we're going to talk about in this class. The corum, which is short and broad, flat-topped, indeterminate inflorescence, has a main vertical axis and peduncles or branches an unequal length. The panicle is a much branched inflorescence. The branches of panicles are often racemes. They may have determinate or indeterminate growth. Flowers are considered solitary where there is only one flower on the end of a stem, such as a rose. However, inflorescence are plants that have flower clusters, actually the branching system of the stem. There's also the fascicle. These flowers are very closely crowded on almost the same plane. And umbels are inflorescences having several branches arising from a common point, giving the inflorescence a knob-like look. A simple umbel consists of flowers with single pedicles. Compound umbels have secondary branching in the form of pedicles at the end of a ray, outer flowers that open first. And then there's the seam, flat top inflorescence, which can be simple or compound, one terminal flower, two or more side flowers coming from the end of the axis. There's also the involucre, which is a cluster of or whorl of bracts or leaves directly under a flower or a clusters of flowers, often under umbels or heads. And lastly on this slide is catkins, which is a spike or raceme or seam composed of unisexual flowers without petal and falls as a unit at maturity. They usually produce only estaminate or pistillate flowers. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but there are determinate or indeterminate inflorescences, which are two types of floral arrangements that differ in their growth pattern and flower position. Determinate inflorescences have the oldest flower on top of the main axis, which stops growing after the oldest flower has opened on the main axis. The indeterminate inflorescence has the youngest flower at the top of the main axis, which continues to elongate and produce new flowers. Indeterminate inflorescences, they are derived from determinate ones. Therefore, determinate is when the first flower to open is at the apex of the stem. Indeterminate is the last flower to open, and it's at the terminal of the main axis. We will be seeing these a lot on Mount Ashland. The capsule is a dry fruit that opens when ripe. It splits from the apex to the base into separate segments known as valves, as in an iris, or forms pores at the top and splits open around a circumference with the top falling off. Okay, now we get into a brief summary of leaf characteristics. And there are so many ways, as with flowers, there's so many ways to describe leaf characteristics more than what I am going to be presenting on in this class. But here are some of the most common examples. So for example, we have narrow leaves, which are found with echinacea and plantain, heart-shaped leaves found in linden, deeply cut leaves such as lomatium, large leaves such as North American beech. We also have round leaves, woolly leaves, broadleaf. And then we're going to get now into BAM. So now we've talked about the structure of flowers and leaves and how that will help us identify plants. Now we're going to get into some of the more frequent medicinal plant families. So often we talk about Oregon grape. So I thought I'd throw in the Berberdaceae family or the barberry family. And these are often characterized with regular flowers, floral flowers, and multiples of threes. The chemistry. So remember, there's patterns in form and function. And the function part involves the chemistry. So the chemistry of Berberdaceae are the alkaloids, the isoquinoline alkaloids, saponins. And there's also the actions, which are bitter, astringent, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, hypolipidemic, antispasmodic, expectorant. Berberine is the main constituent that we look at for Oregon grapefruit, for example, but Berberdaceae plants. And for example, we can identify that by the yellowness of the inner bark, the root bark, and that's the medicine. The energetics of this plant are cooling, bitter, and acrid. And then we have the rose family. And the rose family is often characterized as being herbaceous or woody. Alternate serrate leaves, stipules are present. And so I gave an example of hawthorn here. Also in the rose family, we are identifying the plants. If there are flowers present, they have 5 petals, usually rounded and with sepals, numerous stamens, and there is a hypanthium present. So the rose family often are found with food plants such as apples, strawberries, raspberries, almonds, cherries, plums, peaches, and then many herbs such as agrimony, lady's mantle, hawthorn, meadow sweet, rose, raspberry leaf. And, you know, generally the rose family is very safe. The chemistry consists of triterpenes, tannins, and the main actions are anti-inflammatory, astringent, antioxidant, and cardiotonic. So I often talk about the energetics being cooling and astringent. I always talk about the rose family as being great tissue tonics because of this anti-inflammatory astringent aspect. So when do we use tissue tonics? We use tissue tonics for any kind of leaky tissue issue, such as varicose veins, or for example, diarrhea, or for example, leaky gut syndrome. So these are just some examples. And then we move to a very common family, Laminaceae, the mint family. And these are often, I feel they're herbaceous, really easy to identify because it has a square stem, opposite simple serrate leaves, irregular flowers made up of 5 fused petals with 2 lips, superior ovary, and they're often very aromatic. They are used often for flavoring or culinary herbs, such as mint, oregano, basil, sage, thyme, rosemary, and so forth. Herbs, medicinal herbs being tulsi, lemon balm, wood betony, catnip, motherwort, hyssop, or hound bee balm. So like native plants in Southern Oregon, we have hyssop, or we have monarda, for example. And again, the mint family is generally really safe. The chemistry that's relevant to medicine is volatile oils, rosmaric acid, iridoids. These actions are carminative, meaning they support the GI system, nervine, which means they support the nervous system, antispasmodic, so we use them to control muscle spasms, tissue spasm, diaphoretic, so they help you sweat, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. The energetics of mint family plants can vary, but are mainly bitter, aromatic, or drying. And then we move to the Asteraceae family, the daisy family. And this is mostly herbaceous plants. Flowers are in composite heads of ray and disc flowers. So remember the disc flowers in the middle. Say this is a picture of calendula, and the ray flowers are what we would think of as the petals, but they're actually ray flowers. Layers of bracts, such as false steeples, are under the flower heads, and small achenes with pappus, and they're often aromatic. So in the daisy family, Asteraceae, we use it as food, such as like lettuce, Jerusalem artichoke, sunflowers, but the herbaceous examples could be spilanthes, goldenrod, milk thistle, yarrow, coltsfoot, dandelion, burdock, elecampane, calendula, mugwort, wormwood, feverfew. It goes on, right? And in Asteraceae, the chemistry are for medicine are often the sesquiterpene lactones, iridoids, oligosaccharides, and volatile oils. These chemicals have a bitter effect, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antispasmodic, and prebiotic, meaning they feed our gut bacteria. And the energetics are really variable in this family. And then we have the Apiaceae family, the carrot family. And this is our most common herbaceous plant in medicine, compound, alternate leaves, stems often hollow between nodes, often aromatic, but some are also poisonous. And so you have to have good ID. I just suggest if you're unsure, leave it alone. So sepals, small, scale like 5 or none. Tiny 5-part flowers in the umbels. Inferior ovary. Flower stems are often hollow. And we use these plants as food, such as carrots, parsnips, celery, other culinary herbs and spices, such as dill, caraway, parsley, cumin, anise, fennel, and other herbs, such as angelica, Queen Anne's lace, osha, dong quai. And the chemistry of this plant family consists of volatile oils, different types of coumarins, flavonoids, carotenoids, and the different actions include antispasmodic, so helping spasm, carminative, helping with GI distress or GI function, diaphoretic, helping you sweat, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer. And the energetics are often pungent and warming. Okay, so what is contemporary Western herbalism? Unlike modern medicine's disease-specific approach, Western herbalism views health holistically. It doesn't prescribe herbs solely for specific diseases or symptoms. Instead, it focuses on addressing imbalances within the body. Herbs are seen as allies that provide what the body needs to rebalance and heal itself. And so, for example, here I put in the slide that connecting humans to the right plants to support various conditions due to the plant's phytochemistry and physiological energetic effects, and synchronizing data collected over history regarding traditional use. So we're bringing all, as an herbalist, we're bringing all the information together to make the right match between a plant and a person. Well, so thank you so much. Through this class, I hope that this is a launching point to where to begin one's study of herbal medicine, to make it feel less daunting. Finding that aspect of herbal medicine that interests you, whether it is identifying the local plants by finding commonalities of plant family structures, or perhaps you begin your herbalism journey in the kitchen, cooking with various herbs and experimenting with medicinal preparations, or perhaps it is learning about herbs with a particular flavor or energetic profile, or perhaps you begin learning about a particular medicinal herb action that has a specific effect on the body or an affinity for an organ system. There are countless ways to leap into the world of herbalism. I feel the most powerful is just to be immersed. Pick one plant that excites you and experience it in its medicine in all the ways. For certain, you are bound to develop a relationship with that plant and a new plant ally. And so in conclusion, I left you with this resources of different books that I find accessible for beginning herbalists, all about whether it's making medicine or what the plants do, or identifying the plants, getting into energetics and botany. So here are some beginning resources. So again, thank you so much for being present today in this class. I am always available for questions, and I really look forward to you exploring your appreciation for the herbs and medicinal world. And there's so much available. Don't be overwhelmed. And I look forward to taking a walk in the woods with you.